after traveling halfway around the world, getting back from an awesome vacation, but wanting to take an hour to reconnect with everyone, hear some updates from all the different sectors that you represent, and yeah, just do the work of staying connected. So we're going to take a pretty informal approach to the meeting today. And let me just see if we need, I don't see the need to do introductions, I don't think. Otherwise, oh, Carrie's sending me notes, or maybe everybody. Let's see, how do we want to do this? I think we probably haven't done much to sort of close out the legislative session, so maybe like a hot sec on ACCD and FPR legislative wrap up would be helpful. And then we could do the round robin round the room. Heather, do you want to kick us off with anything you feel like is notable from ACCD's standpoint from the session?
Sure. I think that really the big news for us is the passage of the housing financing tool, CHIP, as people may or may not be familiar with what's called. It's really something that the agency has been working on for, I would say, 10 years or so, to basically get this financing tool available for infrastructure projects, specifically for housing, but it's really the mini TIF. So it's a tax increment complicated financial tool I will not attempt to try and describe, other than I can say that it should actually hopefully move the needle on housing production. So we at the agency are very happy that that passed in the form it did, because it was a little touch and go at the end if it would be as helpful as it could be. So I would say in terms of that, successful session from ACD's perspective. Is there always more to do? Absolutely. But I would say we don't often get a chance to say, hey, we really accomplished something we've been working on for a long time. So that feels good to be able to say that. So that's our highlight.
That's great. Thanks, Heather. Any questions for Heather? I think the only other thing, maybe just before we move past your updates, Heather, I found it really interesting to see some of the statistics from the Vermonter survey that you presented at Steve Ramon's annual meeting, and then maybe just a hot minute on Canadian visitation details.
Sure, I can certainly do that. And so maybe I can start that as sort of our around the room, round the robin. And if there's anything else from legislative session I'm forgetting, it's amazing how it feels like a distant memory already. I think it's sort of like suppressed that part of. But if there are questions, if there are other questions, happy to do my best on that. Yeah, I mean, Canada is, first and foremost on all of our minds. I will let Abby and Claire talk about the meeting that happened last Friday up in Quebec, in the sense that there are many different layers to, what the fallout from, all the federal rhetoric that we're dealing with. One of which is the attempt to increase cross-border collaboration, which again, Claire and Abby can speak to, a meeting that I was not able to attend. As far as the department is concerned, we are sort of inundated with press requests in terms of what we were seeing for visitation decline. It is real. Again, I know Abby can give us the hard truth on the ground what we're seeing. So, border crossings continue to be down over 30%. Cumulative hotel reservations for the year are down 45%. This is just from Canadians. So there isn't, we often say Canadians are 95% of our visitation. So you could say we still have the other 95%, but we know that 5% is much greater up in the NEK and otherwise. And then just another kind of sobering statistic, organic traffic from Canadians to our website is down 70%. So we have a lot to combat in terms of trying to fight for / save, whether it's visitation this summer. And I will be honest that if we can affect visitation this summer and fall, we are 100% in on that, but we're really mostly or more as much focused on long-term brand stability for our Canadian neighbors. So we do have a framework, a tactile framework we've put together that includes um, messaging we're putting together, French first messaging that we're putting together that is in testing right now, that will be followed with, paid media shift. We still have paid media in the market, but a shift in what the messaging is. We're working on a uh, discount and deals program that businesses and other organizations can sign up that will be then served to Canadians in sort of a passport style. That will be part of that will be part of our promotional effort, and then also a specific PR campaign. So that is all coming together. Hope to have a meeting next week on folks that have been more involved in that as like an update, but that's sort of all happening in real time. So don't want to take too much time on that, but yes, it is definitely what we're thinking about. Um, as far as the resident sentiments surveys that I mentioned, a couple, at some events, it's been encouraging as just for the visitor economy at large. We were able to get some questions into the Vermonter poll this year, which is a statistically significant poll of Vermonters. And off the top of my head, I have to go back and look exactly, but we had over 90% of people in the state agree or strongly agree that tourism is an important part of our economy. And very close behind, I think about 85% agree that I can pull up the slides if people want, or I'll just put it in the chat. Agree or strongly agree that it's important to our local economy. And then even when we followed up a little bit more, like, would you increase more, would you be supportive of more tourism in your neighborhood and so forth, that all of those results were over 70%. So it was just nice for us to see that there may be more support out there than sometimes we give ourselves credit for in terms of our effect on the economy, how we activate that, when we need that advocacy, and or how do we make sure we respect and maintain that when we have, ideas going forward, I think is still something for us to work on. But yeah. So
thanks for that, Heather. When you presented those statistics, I found them really like they landed for me like, oh, okay, there's a message here. This is really interesting. So I appreciated you sharing those.
absolutely.
And folks would like to hear that too. Nice. I can go really quickly with some of the legislative stuff, and similar to you, Heather, feel like there are others that can fill in around the periphery, because as with any sort of policy effort, there's a lot of people that play a role in helping things succeed or make progress. And for us in the legislative session, I think it was really mostly about being able to support what was S4, the bill that was trying to address clarity around the ability of municipalities to maintain legal trails. And I think when you look at the ups and downs of how this went through the legislative session this year, we achieved a lot. And at the end of the day, we got the golden ticket too, because there's language that makes clear the intent of the legislature. And we also saw a really strong upswell of support for that intent, even if the court case isn't successful on behalf of the municipality. I think what we saw is that's not going to, the court case isn't going to be something that people accept. So I feel really good about where we landed with that work, and obviously would want Tommy and Abby to weigh in on that as well. Other sort of legislative, I feel similar to you, Heather. It's like I've already kind of blocked it in my head. It was challenging from a budgeting standpoint, but we came out of it with a budget that we proposed. So we have a lot of opportunities to do great work starting July 1, which is great. And we managed to avoid some really interesting proposals around management of state lands that was coming out of the House Environment, Energy and Environment Committee. So some offense, some defense, some good work. So that's what I would say as far as those outcomes. Act 59, I think, is probably the other one that I wanted to spend a little bit of time on before passing the baton. Gannon Osborne, who was the head of the conservation program on behalf of our division, our department, has just moved over to the Nature Conservancy, which is super exciting. It's a bummer that he's leaving the team. He's been here for 7 years, but awesome that we now have that kind of ally at the Nature Conservancy. But he was the primary point of contact for Act 59 on behalf of the agency. He's gone, and now I'm the lucky winner of that job. And so what I can share out is we've established the technical advisory committee. Exciting that we have Nick Bennett as a recreation person, Alex from Backcountry Hunters and Anglers also as a recreation person, and Shelby Sims representing the conservation community from the sphere of folks that people would know on this screen. We met in person last week and are meeting again next Friday. So kind of like launching in sort of fast and furious now that things are up and running. The biggest news, I think, which I would want folks to be aware of and will send follow-up information about, is that we're prepping for regional stakeholder meetings that right now are intended to be at the end of July. We have dates, the third week and fourth week of July is when we have those planned right now, and we'll have an all virtual option. The idea being that we spend a little time getting folks thinking about the different values of conservation in their region, have a presentation on kind of where we've been from the inventory phase into, how are we positioning ourselves to go into planning. And then if any of you had the benefit of participating in some of the early forums that established VOREC and the first action plan, the goal is to have some of those World Cafe type tables with like a strategy or a goal based on what the TAC is reviewing, the technical advisory committee is reviewing right now, and just be able to like crowdsource and jam on that particular topic and wander around the room and do all of that sort of cogitating and conversation having. So that's sort of what we're designing right now, with the goal of having that be very regional in its focus to benefit from sort of that on the ground understanding of where conservation, both from an ecological standpoint and a community resilience standpoint, could be the most impactful. So we can send out information about those dates and locations. They're getting nailed down right now. And then we would be encouraging folks definitely to participate where it is in your local community. I think that's it for me. I mean, there's tons of other things I could talk about, but I don't want to take up too much time. Claire, I don't know if you have anything that you would want to add in from FPR standpoint.
I don't think so. I can add just a little bit on that meeting that Heather mentioned. The Jeff from Hello Burlington had gotten a group of people together to talk with tourism folks from Quebec, and Abby can add as well because Abby was there. And overall, it was really a meeting to establish relationships with people on the other side of the border. I felt like it was a very welcoming, empathetic group. Because for them, actually, this is quite beneficial. They're seeing more tourism to the eastern townships and the zone west of there, which is a French word that I'm not good at saying, so I'm gonna not say it. And they shared that, but they also shared that they want to work for future collaborations. And the two primary ideas for that were agritourism and biking tourism. And I think that the biking link is like very relevant for this group. And we made plans to continue meeting in the fall, maybe having two meetings a year. And Abby, I'm just going to pass it directly to you to add anything else.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, I agree. It was a really beautiful day and positive, warm, fuzzy much needed. And I agree, the long-term goals that came out of it, especially focusing on the bike industry, they're known for their bike routes, not mountain biking specifically, but I think where we can actually take some action is connecting where our rail trails connected, crossing the border, and then even just mapping out, which is mapping out routes that connect both country and state. And those seemed like really positive outcomes. Again, nothing's happening overnight, but other things that I walked away with from there was how organized they are with their efforts, and the incredible amount of resources and money that they have to support these beautiful initiatives that they're putting forward. And there was just a lack of cohesion on our part between chambers and efforts and knowledge of what's happening on one side of the state to the other. And then, the question I flat out asked, if we had like all the marketing money in the world to market to Canadians, would they actually come? And the answer was really blunt: no. It's not about that. It's truly about the threat to their sovereignty right now. So they did give us some really almost easy actionable items that we could do, and free things. Heather, you mentioned press releases. If we were able to, those open letters that KT even did one, and a couple other organizations around the state did, and if we were to offer those press releases, open letters to them, this group that we met with, that they would put it through their outlets, their media outlets as well, all for free, to let folks know that we are here and we are ready for them when they're ready, and that they will always be welcome and safe when they come here. And I think there needs to be some action on our side to do just that. I know there's been some follow-up emails, but no traction yet, and no one person organizing that type of a statement. And I'd like to see that happen. And then mountain bike specifically, we have been trying to take some action that came out of this meeting on Friday. And we are hopeful across the state, all mountain biking organizations, to do a free Canada Day. And we're aiming for August 2nd, which I think is a Canadian holiday weekend. So if one day is free, then maybe they'll tack on it for a whole weekend and at least start spending money in some of our communities and coming. And again, letting them know we're here and we support them and we encourage them, because there's, it's, as we all know, it's more than just the threat to their sovereignty. The exchange rate's really hard, and there's some restrictions at the borders and a fear. So I think, it was nice to have that camaraderie and walk away with some ideas. And I hope on our end we can see them through.
Thanks for sharing that, Abby.
And just to add, the link I shared in the chat was to their outreach, like their kind of version, which was hug it out to welcome Americans, because Americans have been approaching them and saying are we actually welcome where you are? Knowing how you feel about what our president is saying. And that they had a lot of positive reviews from that. So they kind of recommended, like Abby said, almost a response, we're hugging you back. We all love each other sort of messaging, but also an understanding, as we have been doing, an understanding message of we understand that this is really hard for you and you're making a choice, and we understand that choice, but we also love you.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so interesting and difficult about this whole situation, because the Hug It Out campaign that they put together really identified what they were trying to combat was, would Americans feel welcome in Canada? So they could create a message around that, and it's great. And I fully agree, that's can be part of our PR response as to what do we say. The question on our end, as Abby eloquently put, is much more difficult. we're basically asking people to go against their principles, which we don't want to do because we love and respect them, and on the other hand, we don't want to go forward with this, like, but we're really hurting economically, in this sort of desperation sort of tone, because basically it's our fault. That's not their, responsibility to fix that for us. And then it's well, because we have a lot of sentiment research we're getting as well. It's like, okay, so you could say maybe there's 15% of Canadians who would still consider traveling because they would still consider traveling. Then, again, we got so many things against us. It's the rhetoric around the 51st state. It's the safety issue that Abby mentioned, which all we can do is just try to provide the best information we can. And then the economic, that it just doesn't make sense, which is why the firm we're working with to put our, tactical plan together is Canadian. And that's why we've hired them, and they are just, they're recognizing that, they may be one of the only things that will push people to that next level, is to offer that level of discounts. But then also sorry, there's so much here. I'm kind of losing where I was going to go, but also just recognize that there's so much on the Canadian Pride side. I don't know if folks saw, it just came out this morning, but there's now a new Canada Strong pass that they are promoting, they're giving free admission to state and national parks in Canada. I think it's free rail travel and so forth. But anyway, the Canadian government has just launched a whole additional level of stay in Canada. There's lots of, lots of initiatives on the Canadian side to stay in Canada. So it's just layering on the difficulty of bringing folks here. And I know the last thing I was going to say, I think the one thing to remember is that if we do succeed, and if there are folks who are still coming here, I think it is more imperative than ever before that they have a very welcoming experience, because they're going to have to go back home and basically justify why they sort of broke the boycott to their family. And, we just want to make sure that collectively that we can say it was a good experience. So that's just something to add. Sorry, I could talk about this for too long, but anyway, some more thoughts.
I think it's on everyone's mind, so I appreciate, and I love, the sort of lens into this world that you're able to provide in this way, in such a a current status. I don't know. I find it incredibly helpful. So appreciate taking the time to go there. Great. I think I'm going to go sort of around the screen, and maybe Abby, were there other things that you wanted to talk about from an update standpoint other than Canadian visitation? No.
That it's 50% down here at KT, and that's been really hard, with the added challenge of the entire month of May was rainy every weekend. So not the best start to a season. When we were already projecting a decline. So yeah, that's really hard and super challenging. But June seems to be picking up, school's out this week. So we're already seeing that here in town. It's starting to feel like actual summer. And so we hope that continues. And yeah, just the only, everything just seems to be out of our control. So just trying to remain positive. That's it. New trails.
Put a trip to KT on your calendar for the summer.
Yes, please. Thank you for your service.
I think I can oblige that. Awesome. Going clockwise. Kelly, do you want to chime in with anything?
On the legislative front?
On any front.
Oh, sure. We'll start with the legislative front. We had, we were following a number of things, but I think the two main things I can report on include the PFAS bill and the Workforce and Economic Development bill. So PFAS bill did pass and was signed by the governor. It does phase out PFAS in outdoor apparel, and it supports the timeline that we wanted for the industry, July 1, 2028. So that will help not only in the manufacturing, but in the sell-through strategies of retail on products. It's in line with California. It's in line with the industry. We do know that there will still be some challenges with lots of product in the landfill, but that's just the inevitable nature of it, but the industry was definitely supportive and behind it, and everyone's working in lockstep to support the transition. On the Workforce and Economic Development Bill 122, this originated in the Senate, and VOBA was included for a technical assistance program that we would offer for climate and circularity business development. And the Senate Economic Development and House Commerce Committees were very supportive of our role in supporting the sector and being able to identify some of those adaptations and investments that they would like to make, and then supporting them with the technical assistance and matching up with service providers and financing that could help them with some of the ways that they want to either prevent disruption if we have a climate event, or else to just be very proactive or be able to respond quickly in an emergency situation. That was stripped from the bill. We expected that. It was very tough, but we were involved in the discussion with other technical assistance providers. And in the end, we were excited that some of them did get funding, and that is the Vermont Professionals of Color Network, the Vermont Law School, Small Business Center, and the Small Business Development Center with the SBDC. So we support those organizations. They're great. And it allowed us to have this good conversation. I just want to mention a couple other pieces that are related to policy. The other thing we weighed in on was the Climate Action Plan, which is being revised and will be, I believe, released in July. And this is within the Climate Action Office. And it also is a lot in working with the Climate Coalition, which has public and private stakeholders. And so we wanted to weigh in on the workforce and around the business development and the industry roles in the state's climate action goals. And so we're following that process. I understand there's going to be some activity in fiscal year 26 around that revised climate action plan, and another resilience implementation strategy by the governor and treasurer's office. So we'll be following that. It did allow us to also kind of start to work with the Climate Action Office and Department of Labor on climate jobs. And so thinking about some of the work we had proposed in the Economic Development Bill, and thinking about how we can be supportive on the climate jobs front, working in alignment with those offices and the state's goals. So that's been helpful. Federal policy, we are kind of also connected to groups that are doing work in Washington on trade. I understand Steve Wright testified at a congressional hearing on visitation recently, and I can send that hearing link if someone's interested. Also, the public lands advocacy push, because of the sell-off in the budget reconciliation package, is a big advocacy campaign by the industry. Largely that will impact the western states, but the map does show Green Mountain National Forest, White Mountain National Forest. So there's definitely an interest by the northeastern states in the industry here on trying to be an advocate for removing that from the budget bill. Of course, our congressional delegation is very supportive, but that is a real heightened campaign right now across the country by the industry. So I just wanted to flag that because that's pretty important to us all. I guess I'll just end there.
Yeah, I can just share too, Kelly, and Jackie, you're just coming back online, so wouldn't know about this, but the effort that both of you put into preparing some reporting and collection of some of the impacts was incredibly helpful. Recently, there was a request specifically for anecdotes related to some of the effects of at the federal level and beyond, and was able to share some of the anecdotes that you all had collected. So that was really, really helpful. Fraser, you're next on Hollywood Squares. What's going on in your world?
I think some of my, I don't have too many updates to share. I think some overlap with what Kelly shared. Really, from an Outdoor Industry Association perspective, it's been about trade and tariffs and public lands. I think we were in DC in April. We were lobbying on both of those topics. Managed to get the public lands out of that initial bill, but as Kelly just shared, they're back in. The sale of public lands. So really focused on that. And then trade and tariffs. Tariffs have continued to really hurt the outdoor industry. I guess one example that I have for this group is, and you may have seen it this week, on Wednesday, Orvis announced another huge set of layoffs to be completed by the end of this year, another 50 people. And that was on top of the 100 that we had in October of 2024. So that's one example. I know there are others, but that's one that hits close to home. So, the uncertainty in the tariff rates and the fact that outdoor companies really don't have the room and the expense structure to add expenses as significant as what we're seeing in these different countries. If you think about it, our closest allies will get a 10% tariff. There are only so many of our closest allies, and I feel like growing fewer and fewer. And then, everyone else is going to be more than 10%, and it's really significant to the cost structure. That's what I've got. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Fraser. Appreciate having you, in addition to others, really helping keep an eye on what's happening at the federal level. We need as many people engaged in that dialogue as possible. Heather.
Just a quick question, Fraser. Would you mind just providing the context on the jobs in terms of, so if that's 150 total lost since October, out of how many? I don't recall how many total employees Orvis had, if you're able to share that.
Yeah, so what was announced on Wednesday was another 4%. So we have, Orvis has different constituencies. When you add all of our retail associates across the country, there are 80 stores. Orvis didn't announce on Wednesday whether it would be closing stores. My guess is that will probably happen, but it wasn't part of the announcement that came out on Wednesday. So what I don't know is how many of those 50 people are at the home office.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry to hear the news.
Yes, me too. Thank you.
Thanks again, Fraser. Jeff, anything to share from your perspective?
Yeah, apologize. It's wicked windy out here, so you might get some wind in the background. I'm on an accessibility coalition group that has been meeting monthly at this point in time to talk about implementation of the Explore Act. And it is with National Park Service folks, All Trails, Outdoor Alliance. You've got U.S. Forest Service, REI, Sierra Club, and a bunch of other folks. And, they're working on going to D.C. Bi-monthly to do some lobbying with a bunch of different, representatives. But Jeremy Bazell from National Park Service was on the last call, and it was definitely what he was saying was kind of bleak. It was more or less the National Park Service has a travel ban right now. We kind of all know that. They have a spending ban. So it was more or less discussing the Explore Act and what pieces of that can actually be even implemented or attempted to be implemented. So that was kind of, one of those calls where everybody kind of, much like the earlier part of this call coming down from. So on the positive note, I was at KT last weekend and I did spend a bunch of money, and the trails were awesome, and it was a blast. I lured my wife and daughter on not a very long ride, long for them, but I said, hey, we can get pet donkeys at the end at the sanctuary. So that was pretty epic. And then I did actually run into a gal who was implementing the state survey in the parking lot, and I forget her name, but she was super cool. I had a great conversation with her, and the couple next to us gearing up was from Maine, and we had discussed a bunch of things, especially she had seen somebody from Canada earlier in the week, so that was kind of cool. As far as us, just on our front, programming is absolutely insane right now in Burlington. So Burlington is definitely getting a ton of visitors. It might not be from Canada, but they're coming. So it is a lot of out-of-state folks. We did finish our economic impact analysis for winter. We had 3,746 outings from December 26th to April 15th. That equated to $3.6 million to the state. Every adaptive participant had 3.1 people in their traveling party. All these numbers, I'm trying to make it look pretty right now. It's not my job to do that because I can't do that. It would be stick figures. So I'm going to have that pretty and send off to y'all. shortly, so you can kind of see what winter is framed like, and then we are implementing the summer. We're also then going to get all the numbers from all the other adaptive programs and then kind of put them into the matrix to figure out what the state looked like overall for adaptive users. On a few other notes, we are working with Sugarbush and Killington and Pico to put in magic carpets. We're working with Bolton Valley right now on a 40-foot yurt behind Bolton for this winter. And I think I had a few more things on here. Oh, the other thing was when I throw this to the group, the Kelly Brush Foundation, Vermont Adaptive, and VIMBA presented just 2 days ago at the Downhill Mountain Bike Park Summit at Killington. So every resort around the country who has a bike park had representatives here. So we presented on our accessible trail initiative. And we did talk to a few folks from Whistler, and all the sentiments that you had expressed earlier, same thing from that western side of Canada. But we are presenting the same presentation at the Quebec Mountain Bike Symposium in September. So I had mentioned this to Heather a bit ago. The thought process is we have 3 pretty large entities going there to present about all the accessible work we're doing in Vermont. Could we brainstorm on how we can really kind of blow that up a little bit, and kind of Kelly, could you shake down some folks from Vermont businesses, and we ship a ton of fun stuff up there and give a bunch of things away. I don't know, we could figure out what kind of olive branch we could extend. So it's about what I have right now. I'll kick around the Free Canada Day, because I think offering free adaptive lessons on Free Canada Day would be pretty cool. So keep us posted on how that develops.
Awesome.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, sorry, I feel like a lot to say today, but Abby, that idea had floated up to us too, and I think if you guys haven't already made the connection, it's a great, because it's 802 Day, so it's a perfect kind of synergy of a way for us to promote that. So I definitely can see that being a part of this larger, tactical plan for the summer. And then I would just say, Jeff, even if it's not pretty, we're in the midst of doing our 2024 economic impact report. So if there's anything from your report that can help inform our efforts, I'd love to be able to pass that on to our consultants, even if it's not pretty.
Definitely, I'll share the deck with you. It's not a one-pager; it's like 26 pages, but you can get the gist of it from there. So definitely.
Awesome. Thanks.
It's great. Any other questions for Jeff? All right, Sarah, what's going on down in Southern Vermont?
Hi, everyone. So there's quite a bit on my mind here. I think I'm going to put it into 2 different buckets, maybe planning for economic development and then economic development. So we've been working with the Regional Planning Commission. There's some land use considerations, I guess, on my mind. The Rutland RPC is updating their future land use map for the update of their regional plan. And one of the new categories of Act 181 is a recreation resource land use. So we've had some interesting conversations about what that is for future land use mapping and regional plans. We were fortunate to have NVDA give us some input on how they mapped a portion of Kingdom Trails for that particular land use, which also brought me to the Kingdom Campground. I'll be coming your way, Abby, too, with my family. So, that was really interesting to have their perspective on what the economic development impact is for that particular land use and area. So that's one of the things that we've got going on. As part of that, we're starting to hear more conversations about statewide assets in Poultney and how it connects with some of what we're trying to do here, particularly the Velomont. There's a lot of conversations coming up around the Velomont, what it is, where planning is, what it means for communities that are using outdoor recreation as a foundation for their local economy. But interestingly, it is, it is being considered for other communities that have recreational assets so we're kind of in the position of explaining a little bit about what outdoor recreation economy is to other communities, really small rural towns, and what that might mean. So that's a really cool spot to be in. And I think, so the other thing I wanted to share really about it's more about community economic development, which is the tack that Pulteney's been taking for the past few years. We are now finding the need to transition more into what I would consider traditional economic development, where you're actually kind of going out and looking for specific businesses rather than community building first. The community building has had a huge impact and has succeeded, I think. But at this point, we're now in a spot where we need more direct marketing. We need more direct outreach to potential new businesses. Part of that is about our downtown, which is going through a generational change. We have 6 buildings now for sale in our designated downtown, which has happened sort of recently. It's a little bit scary, but we've had property owners that have owned multiple buildings. And so as you know, we have an older demographic in this area. And as those folks are aging out of property ownership and, you know, holding incubator spaces and that type of thing, we're trying to consider what that means for recreation economy-based community. So that's an interesting conversation. I am happy to report too, however, though, that we've been doing more grant writing. And one of the things that I've found recently through the Census Data American Community Survey projections is that the median age for Pulteney has gone down a lot. It's 28 now, whereas the statewide is 43. And I don't have the tools to really analyze that, but it's a wonderful indicator. We're very happy to see that. And the population loss that had been occurring here specifically has stabilized. So, you know, we can actually count the number of people that are coming to this community because it's so small, but it's stabilized. And so that's good news. We've got some new ownership of a few businesses. And folks are coming from other parts of the United States to buy those businesses. So that's super exciting. And I think the last thing that I wanted to share is really about the local level economic impact toolkit that we are embarking on. We're excited for that. It's going to give us some information. We're kind of in a spot where a look back is really welcome at this point. We've been doing this work for about 5 years now. And some of the information that we had, marketing studies and things of that nature, are getting a little dated. So we're happy to have that opportunity to take a look about what the impact really is, and to continue visioning what this community will look like. And sorry, that was not the last thing. The select board has been asked to consider an ordinance, and Tommy knows this, for ATV and UTV use on town roads. So that just happened a couple weeks ago, and Tommy and I have talked about it a little bit. Very happy to have that, have you as a resource here, Tommy. So that's what we're up to.
That's awesome, Sarah. I really appreciate the lens that you're offering. And before I jump to Jeff's question, hearing you talking through the land use conversation made me also remember that Chris Campany is a member of the Act 59 30 by 30 Conservation Planning Advisory Committee. He wasn't able to attend the last one, which is part of the reason why I had forgotten, but I'm really excited that he'll be part of the process.
That's great. Yeah.
It is so cool. Jeff, please do chime in.
I just also wanted to mention the Inclusive Spaces audit and training and workshop that we're going to be hosting in Pulteney, Vermont Adaptive, VRPA, and the Society of Outdoor Recreation Professionals. It's going to be August 18th to the 20th. It's going to have a train-to-trainer experience, as well as a bike demo and a few other fun items. So it's going to be kind of cool to bring that to Pulteney.
Thank you,
I don't
Jeff.
have to travel it. And I don't have to travel that far. It's great.
That's awesome. Thanks. Any other questions or pieces to add to Sarah's update? If not, Tommy. Oh,
sorry.
Jackie,
The only
something.
other thing I would add, I did want to mention the local level economic impact study project that Sarah mentioned, and I'm just getting back into things after being out on vacation, but we are really excited about the pilot communities who are participating in this project. We're doing a series of site visits next week that have been scheduled, including in Poultney. And there's other work going on as well, to really develop a toolkit and understand the economic impact of outdoor recreation at the local level. So I'm happy to share an update about that at a future time when I've gotten all patched up. And maybe at our in-person meeting in July would be a good time to catch you all up on that. And Heather, if there's anything else you want to add, I know you've been a little more plugged in the last month.
No, I think that's great. And I think it probably does deserve maybe a little bit longer chunk, but just to let everyone know that, as you said, site visits next week. We've had the kickoff calls with all communities. And Sarah, I'm really glad that you're involved, not only for Poultney's sake, but just to have this kind of connection too, to keep us informed of how the process is going from your perspective is going to be really helpful. So exciting work. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. Tommy, do you want to close us out?
Sure thing. Thank you. Yeah, so repeat, I know it's talked about the S4, which got moved to S123, or the miscellaneous bill. We were really busy with not only from speaking from Trails and Greenway with the trail language, but us here at VASA through the new leadership at DMV had a portion of a definition change that was part of that. So we were in both committees a lot. One of the big things that came out of it, which from the VTGC standpoint that was really helpful, was recently Jeff Nugent, who is from the southern part of the state regional commission board, joined our board and was one of the best speakers we had regarding the trails component of S123. Provided a really great contextual view from a municipality standpoint. So that was really powerful for us. And I think that was what helped clear a lot of things up, particularly the bill was getting stuck in the House around that trail language. So that was great. As always, Abby, Nick, myself, we're in there, and just again want to thank Abby, and I'll make a thank you to Nick through this group, for the efforts they do to represent trails at the State House and a myriad of issues. The other two that kind of hit the VTGC desk was 147 from the House and 79 from the Senate, which was that Trails Compensation Study Committee. Both got stuck on the wall. There was testimony taken, but right now we're regrouping and trying to look at other ways to find support for that compensation study. Again, we're really pushing for landowner recognition and how we can thank our amazing private landowners that all of us have interactions with and operate on because of them. One conversation that's also coming from that is doing another round of a joint resolution to start that process. I know that conversation came up, but it was very backlogged in the State House this year when it came to joint resolution. So we took a back seat. We're going to start writing again. And so hopefully something like that comes out. And then the last little piece that we've been watching, of course, is things around the stormwater and other climate initiative-based activities, because we want to be very cautious of that. One of the great things from the VASA standpoint, for those who worked with or know Ethan, our trails coordinator, recently was put on the national board at NOVAC. His area of expertise there is private land ownership and private landowner details. But one of the things there is they've done a lot of work on changing how we're building trails and how we handle where water is going and things like that. So one of the other great things from that is our RTP got finalized, and we're going to be holding a Great Trails workshop in August. We're finalizing the date. We're waiting for our trainer who's coming from out west to come and do that. But we're going to have a really awesome training on proper trail building that's going to be held in the Barrie area. And that will be in August. When the date gets there, we did let FPR know. We'll share that out because we'll have some invitations to folks from FPR outside of our clubs. So that's really good. And I know, to echo Abby's sentiments, it's been a very wet start to our maintenance and trail season. But the other thing we have been tracking, the same thing, is we are down a little bit, of course, on Canadian visitors. But we've also done some public good and some direct reach out to our Canadian folks to, again, say, like, if you are going to be making the trip, we welcome you. Our trails are wide open. Come ride, come have a great time, particularly with our largest network being on the border. So, and then the other piece just for VTGC that wanted to share out, we're in the process of a strategic planning process, which is been really intense and really exciting because we're really digging deep into that organization and how we may change or adapt to come out of that. So we have a big retreat next week. We're doing some work. So as that progresses, I know myself or Abby will greatly share out to the group just how that's going, because we're really evaluating how the Vermont Trails and Greenways can be way more supportive, but also how can we grow and be a bigger voice in support of all the efforts that all of you are doing here, and kind of just be that group that can add to it, but also be a group that can lead. So that's what's going on in our neck of the woods.
Plenty, right? That's great. And I do feel like circling back to the legislative conversation, little rusty on my ramp up at the beginning of the meeting, but I do want to circle back and just share my gratitude to the partners. You know, Kelly, the way that you're able to track some of the things where we don't have as much expertise, particularly like the PFAS work, that was really incredibly helpful. And I know connecting Danny with those resources were really nice. And then everything that the Trails and Greenways Council did to help support those bills that we were trying to help get as much traction as possible. It's really nice to be in a position where we have so much collaborative work and we know that we can show up for each other at the State House. It's really awesome. Other thoughts or things that folks want to share out before we start wrapping up? Right. I think the only other thing I want,
I just wanted to add to Tommy, I just realized that we never circled back about RTP funding, because from the federal funding standpoint, we did get federal highway authorization. That's how Tommy's RTP grant is now executed. Most of the grants for this year are executed. Some of them are just still in scope, like little bits of changes. I think we have like 2 left or something like that. So that's really exciting. It was a bit of an unknown. It took a little longer than we expected, and but we're going forward with that federal funding. So that's very exciting and really important for the state to have that.
And I will echo thank you to FP&R for keeping us informed throughout that whole process. I know it was probably a lot and there was a lot of unknown, but we got constant updates, which was great. And when it was finally ready to sign, I got like 6 emails like, please sign. I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm getting to it. Sorry. But that was great to get all those emails like, time to sign, you're good. I'm like, oh, yeah. So thank you so much for that whole team for getting those to us and then working through that.
That's great. Awesome. Well, a good mix of good news, bad news, and collaboration. The only last thing I wanted to mention was based on, sort of our goals around bulking. Oh, sorry, Jackie. Go ahead.
No, I can go after you, Becca.
Okay. I was just going to mention that we had put out the survey for your input on steering committee nominations and characteristics. A few of you have gone in and provided some input. If you haven't yet, please do. We want to really sort of hit the ground running with getting some recommendations through to the governor's office so that we can fill Hollywood Squares back up with some great people to work with us. So please do, if you haven't, complete that survey. If it's too cumbersome and you want to, share a couple of notes through a phone call or an email, that's fine too. Mostly we just want your input. So whatever works best for you. Thanks.
The only plug I wanted to share and reminder that we've scheduled our next in-person steering committee meeting for Monday, July 21st. We're planning to meet in the town of Cabot, and I'm working on finalizing the location for that with our contacts there. But we're really excited about that. The meeting's going to be from 10 to 3 p.m. And we're really looking forward to seeing everyone in person.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Jackie. That's great. All right. Well, with that, happy Friday, everybody. I hope you have plans for a lovely weekend. And we'll look forward to being in person the next time we're together. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Take care.
Bye.